Rising to meet the challenge of government cuts and a spike in need. Ahead on Face the State, the Mid-Ohio Food Collective making adjustments after losing millions in funding and seeing a government shutdown surge of demand. How the nonprofit is working to carry out its mission in the middle of a trying time and the holiday season. Plus,
of course, it's stress because if they're going to garnish like 25% of my wages in this economy, nobody can live off of that.
Are you drowning in medical debt? Some call it a crisis hiding in plain sight. Now, two lawmakers are crossing the aisle to try to ease the burden and stop the bankruptcies. And Ohio House Republicans passed the controversial Baby Olivia Act. It would require public schools to show a video of a fetus developing in a womb. But is it science or propaganda? Hear from both sides of the debate. Face the State starts now. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I hope you all had a very nice Thanksgiving. No doubt, though, some people struggled to put food on the table for their families this holiday. Many struggle to do that every day. A major nonprofit organization that's working to meet the need is dealing with some challenges of its own because of government cutbacks and the government shutdown. This facility in Grove City acts like a hub for the Mid-Ohio Food Collective's more than 600 community partners. The collective says 2024 was the busiest year in its 45-year history. It provided food for more than 500,000 individual Ohioans. Those partners are soup kitchens and food pantries across 20 counties in central and eastern Ohio. Together, they serve more than 5,000 Ohio families every day. But because of cuts, the Mid-Ohio Food Collective is going through the holiday season with fewer resources. Senior Vice President of Communications, Mike Hochran, told me they're dealing with nearly $5.5 million in reduced government funding and product since January. That includes federal and state funding. He says the SNAP benefits delayed during the government shutdown also caused a spike in need. I recently sat down with Hochran to talk about Mid-Ohio Food Collective's mission and what it's doing to carry it out. We talked about the funding situation, the impact of the SNAP benefit delay, how the nonprofit is adjusting to the changes, and the need for food assistance this year. All right, Mike, so just to set the foundation, what is the Mid-Ohio Food Collective? How does this operation run?
Right. So Mid-Ohio Food Collective is the largest anti-hunger nonprofit in central and eastern Ohio. And we are the backbone of the charitable hunger relief system for 20 counties in central and eastern Ohio. So we work with over 600 partner agencies. These are food pantries, soup kitchens, senior feeding programs, and the like, where people in their own community can go to get help where they need it to help put food on the table.
So do you act as like the hub of a wheel where do you supply the food to those
That's
pantries?
exactly right. You think about it, it's like the backbone organization of a pretty complicated system. And so our role, among some other things, is sourcing and distributing over 80 million pounds of nutritious food every year.
80 million?
80 million. It's enough food for about 183,000 meals every day. It's an incredible impact. But in order for that food to get out, we work with this fabulous network of locally community-oriented partners who are there in communities to serve their neighbors. They're trusted, they're visible, they're of the community, and they're there when people need them.
So the government shutdown led to a delay in people receiving their SNAP benefits. Mm-hmm. How much of an impact did that have on the Mid-Ohio Food Collective and its partners?
Well, in the 60 plus years of the SNAP program, nothing like this had ever happened before. And SNAP is America's first line defense against hunger here in Ohio and across the country. Feeding America estimates that for every meal Mid-Ohio or food banks distribute, SNAP provides 9 times as many meals. And so when you see all of these families, almost 1.5 million Ohioans who receive some SNAP benefit each month, it was an unprecedented disruption in their food budget. We're talking about families with low income. Almost 2/3 of those families have children, about half have a senior or somebody with a disability, and these folks all of a sudden found themselves in the middle of this, political tussle, and at the heart of it, they weren't sure if they were going to have the resources they needed to feed their kids or to, put dinner on the table the next night. And so it really was, pretty unprecedented. And the result is people suddenly needed help in ways they never had before. And we saw an incredible spike all of a sudden in people coming to their local pantry looking for help.
So there was that rush, so to speak, to get the supplies they needed.
That's absolutely right. So the holiday season is always busy, and Thanksgiving is usually the very busiest time of year because it's a holiday built around putting food on the table, as we all just experienced. But outside of specific Thanksgiving distributions, the 3 busiest days we have ever had all happened in the first couple weeks of November. So we really did see a very notable increase. In some places, really stretched to the boundaries of how many families they could
I was going to
serve.
ask, were you able to meet the need?
So we met the need as very best as we could. And that meant trying to step up our food sourcing, getting additional high demand product, using local government, local philanthropic, individual charitable giving, people being really generous. And we were able to use that to help put more high demand product out. So milk, eggs, meat, and produce to help absorb some of that increased need. But it really was a stretch in some places.
Now, you also lost millions in funding and product from cuts in the federal government and the state government. Can you explain that situation and how much of a reduction you saw?
Sure. So food banks, at the heart of food banking is taking surplus food and getting it to hungry people, right? It's about why should we waste food when there are people who really need it in our communities. And that's where we excel. That's still the foundation of what we do. But on top of that are these different government programs that help get certain types of product where there's extra in the market of federal commodities or Ohio and regionally grown produce, and get that extra product, bring it in at a really low price, and then get it out to communities where it's needed. And so it's a really complicated stacking of resources to get the very most out of every dollar that comes in. And so when we saw these cuts from the feds or state funding, it meant that whole parts of our food stream were disrupted, where we really didn't have milk and eggs except for what just came through surplus donations because the resources had to stretch as much as we could, and that really meant leaning into fresh produce.
I was going to say, so where did you really feel the impact of? I think it was like $5.5 million of a reduction for this year.
So the places we saw it most were in milk, eggs, meat, and then a reduction across the board in produce. We, about 2/3 of what we distribute last year is fresh products. That's fruits, veggies, milk, eggs, bread, perishable products. And we saw a pretty significant reduction across the board, particularly because of those state funding reductions. Just in Mid-Ohio's territory, it's about 4 to 5 million pounds a year less in produce because of those cuts. And that meant that while numbers are up and have been up just because of the state of economy and affordability writ large, what we've seen is that we have more hungry people to feed and less resource coming in. And so we really are working to maximize everything that does.
And so how have you adjusted to deal with that reduction?
Well, we like to say during COVID, maybe the shopping cart was full and now it's half full, going down to 1/3 full. We are making sure that we always have food coming in, that it's going out to our community partners. We're looking to increase industry food donations, increase charitable giving. Those are ways that we can work to make up the difference. But the only options are you serve fewer people or there's a little bit less for everybody. And I don't think we want to see anybody go without. And so we're just stretching and maximizing our resources as much as we can.
So how many Ohioans do you and your network of pantries and food banks serve in a year?
So we are one of 12 Feeding America food banks in the state, but we are the largest. In Mid-Ohio and our partners help feed more than 500,000 unique Ohioans every year. And what's really gone up significantly is how many families we're serving every day. Last year, we helped feed more than 5,000 families each and every day across the entire year.
Every day. So, and who is it that you serve? Are the demographics changing because of economic situations? Who are you seeing come into the pantry?
Well, the first thing to know is we're serving your neighbors. We're serving people in every community, right? There's hunger where you might not expect it. In our prosperous suburbs, in the heart of our city, out in rural and agricultural communities, hunger is an everywhere problem. It's not a me, a you, it's an us problem, right? And so we've seen an increase, especially as the cost of living and affordability creep up on people. There are so many folks in our community who are working hard, who have 1 or 2 jobs, who are following all the rules and doing everything right, and they're still one bad day away from needing a little bit of help. And so we've seen certainly an increase in seniors on fixed incomes, families with kids, and especially working families, because just that balance of dealing with everyday costs. Food's that one part of your budget that sometimes you have to reel back, and people do.
And we are in the holiday season right now, always kind of the biggest time of year for people wanting to help or whatnot. But first of all, what are you seeing this year in terms of demand maybe compared to just recent years?
Right. Well, this is always the busiest time of year, and what we've seen, through November as a result of the shutdown is numbers have really gone up earlier than they normally would, and we'll have to see what the rest of the holiday season has in store for us. But we expect we're going to stay incredibly busy, and we are so grateful to be able to be in a position to help feed our neighbors, to make the holiday season a little bit brighter, right? Whatever your faith tradition, we all come together over food and celebration this time of year, and it's important everyone can do that.
So how can someone, if they are in a position to help, how can they help?
Right. So we pride ourselves on stretching every dollar. For every dollar donated to Mid-Ohio, we can distribute 2.5 meals. So $100 would be 250 meals to feed hungry neighbors. And the need certainly is high this holiday season. Unfortunately, we think it's going to stay high for the next several years because just a general affordability doesn't seem to be getting any better. But donations go an incredibly long way, but so does volunteering. There's no better way to know that you're doing good and go away feeling like you made a difference than rolling up your sleeves and doing something that really matters, right? And at the end of the day, what could matter more than helping your neighbor have a healthy meal on their plate, have a little more stability and security? It's something that we can all be proud of doing together.
If someone wanted to get involved, how could they? How would they know where to go, who to contact to help out?
Yeah, best place to go is just go to mofc.org for Mid-Ohio Food Collective. You'll see big green buttons. One says get help, one says volunteer, one says donate. And whatever position of life you're in, some people, we have volunteers who are also customers, and that's a beautiful thing. But we don't judge on where someone is. We just know there is room for everyone to get help, to give help, and to help all come together to help fight hunger in our community.
It is a pretty typical case, I think, too, where you have someone who receives help so they feel like they should do something for it, right?
Yes, but there are no preconditions to get help. We're just here. If you need food, we're here to help out. Some of our best supporters, so many people in our lives, they might not talk about it, but it's a really common experience that someone's dealt with food insecurity at some point in their childhood, in their college years, when they were just getting started up in their career, or maybe your grandma, grandpa, older parents. There are people in our lives, there are stages where all of us need some help. And that means if you're in a position to give right now, the holiday season is a great time for those of us with a little more to give to help out those with a little less.
Right. And we'll check back in with you maybe after the new year to see, because the need goes on beyond the holidays.
That's absolutely right. Hunger doesn't take a holiday, and we'll be here for people all throughout.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
And this holiday season, 10 TV is teaming up with the Mid-Ohio Food Collective and several community sponsors for our new initiative, Fill the Truck, Feed the Kids. Every dollar helps support meals for those who need them most. You can make a difference by donating today. Just text the word FEED to 614-460-3345. We'll send a link right to your phone to show you how you can help. Please help us fight hunger across Central Ohio. Still ahead on Face the State. The Medical Debt Fairness Act. For many Ohioans, medical bills pile up and it seems there's no escape. Now, 2 lawmakers are working on a bipartisan plan to help those in debt pay off what they owe while cutting back on the stress. And later, Ohio high school athletes can now make money off their name, image, and likeness. How we got here and what it means for schools and athletes in the changing landscape of money in amateur sports. Medical debt is a crisis hiding in plain sight. And for the 800,000 Ohioans living with unpaid medical debt, it's a burden they simply cannot escape. This morning, we take you inside the realities facing ordinary people for whom rising hospital bills, lawsuits, wage garnishments, and credit hits have become part of everyday life. 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains how 2 Ohio lawmakers are working to protect those drowning in debt.
I went to the hospital back in 2018.
Maddie Randolph joined a growing number of Americans battling medical debt.
They're suing me for $4,111.
Randolph was treated at Mary Rutan Hospital in Bellefontaine, but says she wasn't billed until years later.
I just got my first bill maybe 2 months ago.
The hospital says it can't speak on individual cases and added, legal action for payment on medical bills is always the last resort, only after we have worked with patients to offer every available alternative. From 2021 through October of this year, the nonprofit hospital says it provided $3.4 million in charity care for those who could not afford medical care. Randolph says the hospital has threatened to garnish her wages for non-payment.
Of course it's stress, because if they're going to garnish like 25% of my wages, in this economy, nobody can live off of that.
The hospital says it ended reporting medical debt to credit bureaus last year. It declined our request for an interview, so it sent us this video response instead.
The sustainability of our organization does require that we seek collection of patient balances, but the use of legal process is extremely rare. And in fact, only 1.5% of all of our open patient balances over the last 5 years have gone to a legal process.
Like most rural hospitals, keeping the doors open is getting more difficult as patients with no insurance or not enough insurance make it harder for hospitals to pay its bills. Over the past 5 years, the hospital says it filed legal action against more than 3,000 patients, or about 1.5% of its patients' accounts with a balance. The hospital points to several reasons for increased court filings: a backlog of accounts from COVID-19, changes to Ohio law that shorten the time to collect from 8 years to 6 years, and liability laws require hospitals to take legal action against the recipient of medical care first, then the spouse, resulting in multiple filings. Two Ohio lawmakers, a Democrat and Republican, are uniting to help ease the burden for Ohioans who are drowning in medical debt.
Medical debt is the #1 reason why people go into bankruptcy in this country.
Democrat Michelle Grimm and Republican Gene Schmidt are co-sponsors of the Ohio Medical Debt Fairness Act. It would do 3 things: prohibit medical debts from going on credit reports, ban wage garnishment, and cap interest at 3%. It currently stands at 8%.
All we're saying is you still owe them money, but we're not going to push you to the brink of bankruptcy in order to pay it.
The Trump administration says shielding consumers from having their medical debt appear on the credit report is something only the federal government can do, not states. That could impact Ohio's bill, which has opposition.
The only people that came out against the bill were the debt collectors. And when I had them in my office, they said, "You don't understand. We might be out of a job."
Dr. Vikas Sani is president of the Loan Institute. It's a nonpartisan think tank advancing a more affordable, effective, and fair healthcare system.
I don't think hospitals should be expected to solve the problem of the affordability of American healthcare all by themselves. I mean, we have a big problem in this country. The prices are too high. A lot of what gets done is probably not that necessary.
As for Maddie Randolph, she's headed to court and hopes she can keep the bill collector away.
What's going to happen, do you think, if you can't make these payments?
I don't know. I feel like in this circumstance, maybe bankruptcy.
She's hoping state lawmakers can throw her a lifeline.
Everyone should be able to have affordable health care. Everyone should be able to afford basic needs, and if they're sick, be able to go to the hospital.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
The Ohio House recently passed the Baby Olivia Act. The legislation would require schools to show a video of a fetus developing in a womb to students in fifth grade through high school. The video was produced by an anti-abortion group. Planned Parenthood has called the video, quote, medically inaccurate. House Republicans passed the bill with 0 Democrats voting for it. 10 TV's Carla Rogner talked to the state representative pushing for this bill and an organization opposing it.
This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey.
That's a short clip of the video produced by anti-abortion group Live Action. The 3-minute animation shows the development of a fetus called Olivia, from fertilization until birth. Representative Melanie Miller's bill would require public schools to show this video to children starting in 5th grade. It would also require students to watch a 3-minute video of an ultrasound.
I am hoping that children, this will spark their curiosity. It's really a miracle, the process that happens from when we are conceived, when we have a unique DNA, to when our heart begins beating.
Is the video meant to sway children against the idea of abortion?
No, not at all. I mean, certainly life is beautiful. And so I think it is important, though, that children know the truth about science.
But the idea that this is about science has received pushback from advocates for reproductive rights.
This bill in particular is requiring schools to use a video created by an anti-abortion organization that is full of misinformation and anti-abortion propaganda. And that is just not appropriate for students in our schools.
Representative Miller says the curriculum is designed to be age appropriate, but parents can opt out of it. Gabriel Mann, a father of 2 high schoolers, says he would look into that option.
You really need them to have good education. This video isn't it. This is a piece of propaganda. I don't want that shown to my kids.
This legislation will now move on to the Ohio Senate. If it's eventually passed there and then signed by the governor, the representative I spoke to said she wants to get it in schools as early as next year. Reporting at the State House, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
Coming up next on Face the State.
At some point, it's going to be here. Whether you want it here or not, you got to realize it's a different world.
The days of high school athletes getting nil for playing sports are over. Now they could get NIL. The results of an emergency vote are pushing Ohio into the modern age of sports. Now an update on a story we brought you last Sunday. Name, image, and likeness is officially allowed in the state of Ohio for high school athletes. The Ohio High School Athletic Association announced a majority of member schools voted to allow NIL deals in an emergency vote. This move now puts Ohio alongside nearly every other state in allowing high school athletes to do this. 10 TV's Colin Dorsey has been following this for months and explains where it all stands.
At some point, it's going to be here. Whether you want it here or not, you got to realize it's a different world.
That different world now includes high school athletes being paid for their name, image, and likeness, something unheard of just 3 years ago when this same issue failed to pass.
But I watched that 6 states at the time had it, and I watched that continue to grow across the country. And now I believe we're the 45th state that has it, just in that short period of time.
I sat down with the OHSAA Executive Director Doug Ute to talk about this change. He says it's taken a lot of meetings and a lot of calls with other states to learn what works and what doesn't.
The real work for us begins now on how do we educate, how do we provide education for our member schools, how do we provide education for our student athletes and their families.
This vote was forced by a lawsuit brought by the family of Jameer Brown, a Huber Heights football player. The family argued he missed out on more than $100,000 in NIL deals. I talked with the family's attorney after the vote results.
Jameer wanted this opportunity not just for himself. He really wanted to fight for high school student athletes across the state, and they did that. And he won.
Attorney Luke Fedlam says it was always an issue of fairness, where non-athlete students were able to profit off their abilities, but athletes were bound by association rules.
And really, if we think about it at the high school level, NIL, the right is there to earn compensation.
And for the OHSAA, it's now time to push forward into this new frontier for Ohio high school athletics.
What excites you or concerns you about this?
Well, I'm always concerned about money when you talk about high school athletics. And we want to protect the amateurism of a high school athlete. I'm really not concerned a whole lot about that. As long as everybody follows our bylaws, everything will be fine.
And the bylaws allowing this are restrictive on how a student can benefit from an NIL deal. For example, it has to be separate from the game or team activity. As for the lawsuit, Fedlam says the paperwork is being filed to have that dropped. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30. Have a great day.